So I just got done watching Dune, and I gotta admit, it wasn't actually that bad. I never really expected this movie to be awful, but I wasn't expecting great things from it either. It is from a franchise that I had never heard of before this, and also has the problem of being a movie that is very accurate to the source material, but if you've never read the source material, it's harder to appreciate. And of course, I'm coming into this with no prior knowledge, meaning that if you do have prior knowledge, maybe don't completely take my opinions because it's kind of going to depend. But most people probably haven't read any of the books from the 1960s, so yeah. So this is going to be a no prior knowledge review. And with that in mind, like I said, I think it was pretty good. The first thing that I have to praise is probably the most obvious thing, which is the acting. All of the actors are doing a great job, and all of the characters are done really well. There's only a few side characters where I don't think they're handled very well. The doctor that ends up betraying them in the movie doesn't have any motivations, and it's actually really confusing. The primary villain, I guess, going on here also doesn't really have many motivations that you get to see in the movie, and it's a little bit confusing, especially as someone who, once again, didn't see any of the source material before this. And also, like, this is just the first part of the story, so it's kind of harder to appreciate this movie since I don't know how it's going to end up, like, turning out in its full product. And this just being half a movie is I'll just say it's not my favorite thing in the world. Also, I will say that the problem with this movie, especially, is that the pacing is not great. This movie is very, very slow paced. It's an action adventure movie, but it's more of an adventure movie, and there's not a lot going on for most of it. This is a movie which primarily is about politics, which is fine, but looking at the trailers, you can't really tell. They always put in the most exciting stuff in the trailers to get people in the theaters, but that stuff is not very common in the 2.5 hour long film, so the movie's pacing is kind of rough sometimes. Outside of that, though, another problem kind of comes in with the lighting. The effects in this movie look excellent, and it truly does look like a 2021 film. Everything in this movie is just made really well, but some of the shots, especially shots where it's the desert and it's super dark, and this is especially towards the end of the movie, but I can barely tell what's going on. And you know what? Maybe it's just me on this. I had this exact same problem with Loki, and apparently I was the only one who had this issue. But lighting was definitely a problem that I felt towards the end of the film, but most of the film is pretty well lit. You can tell what's going on. Most of the time, it's just kind of annoying. And there's a point in the middle of the movie where it's dark and in the desert, and that's not the one I'm talking about because, like, not having good lighting, it's kind of the point of the scene, so that's fine. But for other scenes, it doesn't really work super well. I also feel like this movie probably could have been improved a little bit if it was able to cut like 10 minutes or something out of it. Because, like I said, by the time that the movie comes to its ending, it just is really dragging. And I feel like there's a lot of parts where they kind of just adapted the book just word for word. And it doesn't really work the best, especially when there are some like missing plot gaps in it. But like I said, this is just the first half of the story. I'm trying not to judge like too harshly on something that I don't know what the finished product is going to look like. But it's also kind of annoying to have that level of storytelling where I have to continually say that this is just the first half of the story. But I don't know. I don't really have a lot to say about this movie, probably just because it was enjoyable and had problems, but not like a lot of them. And I don't know. I'd be interested in watching a second half, but not super, super interested. I can't really see myself reading any of the books after watching this movie, which is a little bit disappointing because I kind of want to read something soon. But yeah, that's pretty much my full opinions on Dune. Not a lot to say. And well, I'm kind of split between giving this a 7 or an 8. Something I have noticed with a lot of my movie reviews is I end up giving them a larger score than I actually want to give them. Like, I gave Black Widow a 7 out of 10. Yeah, let's just say that score has gone down. But I will say that for Dune, well, maybe I would give it an 8. I think I would later kind of regret that, so I'm going to give it, for now, a 7 out of 10.